right, folks, if you love SEC football, join us each and every week for Vols Breakdown. You can catch us on the SEC Breakdown channel on YouTube, also with MarkRogersTV as well, where we talk at Tennessee and by extension, the SEC, where we're jumping in right now with Mike LaValle from College Last Word on College Football to break down the best at each position. So we've already knocked out wide receivers, cornerbacks, and safeties with Mike. You can catch those videos at MarkRogersTV. Now we're going right to quarterback, where a few of the best in the league moved on. Chad Kelly, Josh Dobbs in particular from last season, but most of the best quarterbacks back added in 2017. So, Mike, I'd be interested to hear your top five and see where I can possibly find a bit of a flaw in maybe some of your rankings. Let's see.
Mark, I'll start out by saying that all of my position groups have been released on lastwordoncollegefootball.com. If you want to see my 5 rankings for any position group returning to the SEC, check it out there at lastwordoncollegefootball.com. At quarterback, at number 5, I have Jacob Eason, the sophomore, returned to Georgia. Came in with a lot of fanfare last season. And kind of led Georgia to the bowl game last season. I would tell you that the thing that worries me most about Jacob Eason is he only had a 55% completion ratage. Now, when you have running backs and you have the talent surrounding him, I really think, and the arm that he has, I think his completion percentage should be better than that. So that's what dropped him to me for number 5. He's got all the talent in the world, very strong arm. But when you're throwing at 55% completion ratage at Georgia with the talent you have surrounding you, that's a question mark to me. He's also not much of a rushing threat as well. So at number 5, I have Jacob Eason at Georgia. He doesn't have to win a whole lot of games this year. That defense is coming back with 10 of 11 guys. They should be a dominant defense, one of the tops in the nation. And he's got Sony Michel and Nick Chubb back. So he's not going to have to win a whole lot of games. He's just going to have to not make mistakes and continue to move the chains. We'll see if he can do that. At number 4, I have number 4 is really either Sean White or Jarrett Stidham at Auburn, whichever one starts. Sean White had a great year last year. I think he was kind of underappreciated. He was very inconsistent, but he did have the highest completion rate in the conference, 63.9%, 8 yards per attempt, which is very good, and a 143.14 rating, which is best for 4th in the league. He was a little inconsistent. Jarrett Stidham, on the other hand, has all the hoopla, but let's not forget, Jarrett Stidham has only played half of one college season. If he lives up to his expectations, Auburn could be going to the college football playoffs this year. If not, you could see Sean White, just like last year, come in and try to salvage the season for Gus Malzahn. So at number 4, I have whoever starts for Auburn, whether it's Sean White or Jarrett Stidham. At number 3, I have Nick Fitzgerald out of Mississippi State. His passing numbers aren't very good. He only had a 54% completion ratage. But if you look at his rushing numbers, he had the second most yards of any rusher in the league last year. Had 1,375 yards, 7-yard average, 16 rushing touchdowns to go with his 21 passing touchdowns. People talk about how much he needs to improve as a passer, but his passing touchdown to interception ratio was 21-10. That's not horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. He did regress in the season a little bit. Being a running quarterback, that tends to happen because you wear down. And he was not surrounded by a whole bunch of talent there at Mississippi State. But again, when you score 37 total touchdowns, you're getting into some elite area in the SEC. If he can just get a little, he seems to be a lot like Joshua Dobbs when he transitioned from a sophomore to junior year. If he could just get a little bit better in the passing game, he could be a very potent weapon. So I have Nick Fitzgerald at number 3. Number 2, I have Austin Allen. They're at Arkansas, following in Big Brother Brandon's footsteps, knocking on the door at the top quarterback in the SEC. Over 3,400 yards last year, tops in the conference. 8.6 yards per attempt, also tops in the conference, and 25 touchdowns. He did have 15 interceptions. So at 25-15, it's kind of not the balance you want. The 25 is good, the 15 is bad, obviously, and had a pretty decent passer rating. He did he kind of played a little bit didn't play as well against superior opponents, kind of struggled against the top opponents, but he was extremely consistent. He does lose his number 1 running back. They're going to have a little bit depth issue, so I think Arkansas is going to rely upon him to do a little bit more this year. than he's been asked to do in the past. That's kind of concerning with the 15 interceptions last year. We'll see. He does have probably the best center in all of college football coming back, so the offensive line should help him out. But at number 2, I have Austin Allen. And then number 1, I have Jalen Hurts. And I'll be honest with you, Mark, this kind of surprised me going into this. I did not think Jalen Hurts would end up number 1. But when I looked at his numbers, and I understand the counter argument here. The counter argument is he's surrounded by 5 stars at every position, and that's a legitimate comment, and it's probably accurate. He's got 2 great running backs behind him and a great defense over there, but you still have to make the plays. Jalen Hurts did that. Completion percentage of 62.8 completion percentage, 2,780 yards, 4th in the league, to go along with his 954 yards rushing, almost 1,000 yards rushing last year, 23-9 touchdown to interception ratio, and then 13 touchdowns on the ground. So 36 total touchdowns. He was much better passer than I think people give him credit for. Now, again, the counter argument to that is Kiffin called plays that kind of benefited him, those short routes, crossing routes over the middle, not a lot of deep throws, and the deep throws he did have were timely. A lot of people attribute his success to those around him or his coaches, but he still had to make the plays. Obviously, he didn't play well down the stretch, particularly against that game against Clemson. But if you look at the whole body of work for 2016, I think Jalen Hurts is probably the best quarterback coming back. And he's only going to get better. He's only going to be better this year after having a whole summer in that program and having 2 running backs come back, and, of course, still being surrounded by a whole bunch of 5 stars. So I have Jalen Hurts at the number 1 returning quarterback in the league.